Okay, I am today going to do the 4th chapter of Horrible Histories, Measly Middle Ages. Are you ready? You can pause this video if you're not. 3, 2, 1, eat your chicken nuggets. Okay. Lousy Lancastrians? No. Chicken nuggety, and no. Feudal fellows. Okay. The Normans brought the feudal system with them. The king was at the top of the heap, and peasants at the bottom. They paid for everything. They worked in his fields, worked in his castle, repaired his roads, all for free. The peasant then worked on a small patch of his own land in his spare time. Not a lot of that. If the peasant made any money, then he paid taxes to his lord. He paid the lord for grinding his corn, pressing his apples, or baking his bread in the measly lord's oven. The feudal system. I'm villain. My lord lets me live on his land. In return, I work for him. I'm a slave, the lowest of the low, and I'm even lower than you. I'm a free peasant. I farm the land owned by my lord. In return, I pay him rent. I'm poor and miserable. I'm poor, miserable, and overworked. I'm a knight. I get my land from the king. In return, I fight for him when he needs me. Nothing but fight. And who has to look after the land while he's away? Poor me! I'm king. I get my land from God. In return, I say prayers, build churches, and fight for him. But there's always someone after my throne. Now I'm trying to give him sons to carry on the royal family. What a life. I'm God. I thought I'd made all these chaps equal. Maybe my other servant will sort this out for me. I don't think that's how God looks. I don't know how God looks, though. And this is totally death. Death is that girl. Yeah, Death is a girl with a scythe. And people believe that she's the person who rows a boat. And also kills you after you're dead. But I don't think this is how God looks. That's what I feel. God can speak every single language because he created every single human. As I think lots of people know. Okay, I'm deaf. They're all equal as far as I'm concerned, but a dose of plague will do them the world of good. And the plagues of the 14th century certainly changed the world. After the Black Death, there weren't so many peasants about. Peasants became rare and valuable. Since when did peasants become valuable? My dear little working chap, work for me and I'll pay you double wages. It's more pleasant for peasants at the present. That's a bit better. But remember, I'll be back. You'd think the peasants would be better off dead. They weren't. After a peasant died, the measly lord took his best possessions. After all, they had only been loaned to the peasant during his lifetime. No wonder. The peasants are revolting. In the measly Middle Ages, peasants had a short life. but a miserable one. If overwork didn't kill you, then you could die from ordinary things, like a rotten tooth. Storing food over the winter could give you a type of food poisoning. Then there were extra nice diseases to look forward to, like St. Anthony's fire. An arm or a leg would get a burning pain, then drop off. What? That is not nice. But I really have to go to the bathroom. Is it okay if I just leave for a few seconds and you can skip to later on if you want to, which would be a good idea. So go skip to later on. Okay, bye. Okay. Oh, just skip. Remember that. I am back, and you should have skipped to 7:15, and I'll tell you that later at 7:30. Normal leg will keep running, then drop. Go to 7:15, and then you'll see me read. When you died, you'd hope to... Oh, actually, no, 7:30. When you died, you'd hope to go to heaven. But stories went around that a peasant's soul didn't get to heaven. Demons refused to carry it because of the horrible smell. They were really revolting. While the peasants froze in the field, died in ditches, or starved in slums, the rich people had fun. In the 14th century, Count Robert of Orta had a very pleasant garden. It had statues that squirted water at you as you walked past, a trapdoor that dropped you onto a feather bed, a hose pipe that squirted water up ladies' dresses, a statue that squawked at you like a parrot, a room that greeted you with a thunderstorm as you opened the door. Have a nice relaxing walk in the garden, he said. Aha. No wonder the peasants hated the nobles in their castles. The peasants didn't go to school, but they knew one simple sum. There are more of us than there are of them. In France, 1358, they decided to take over. The French Rebellion was known as the Jacquard because any peasant was known as Jacques, a John in English, a very common name. So it was the revolt of the Johns, or 2, they were padded of the Jacquerie. 2, they wore padded boiled leather jackets as a sort of cheap armor, and these jackets were called jacques, so it was a revolt of the padded boiled leather jackets. Take your pick. Either explanation could be right or both could be wrong. Of course, the peasants weren't used to organizing themselves. The nobles were. At first, the jackals murdered a few surprising nobles. Okay, 22nd of June, 1358. The Paris Post. Still only 25 centimes. Peasants have nights in days. The brave battling peasants need a strong leader and a strong army. Peasants need a new leader. The brave battling peasant army has a new leader who is leading the Jolly Jackery to victory. His name is Will Kell, and he's just what the proud peasants need. A strong leader and an experienced soldier. The revolt began 4 weeks ago, when the peasants grew furious that the French king had been captured by the English, and the noble knights had done nothing except run away, armed with axes, scythes, and pitchforks. A 10,000-strong army captured over 100 castles. You can't see it. Oh, sorry. I'm just trying to find a position. Knights fled with their families or stayed and died. There are reports of Jack's jokes across good night on a spit, then forcing his wife to eat the roasted flesh. Amazingly, 2 enemies, an English knight and a French knight, joined forces to help Meaux when it suffered a Jacques attack. Captain de Buch and Gaston Fulvis said, "When noble ladies are in danger, a knight's got to do what a knight's gotta do. Gotta do what a knight's gotta do." The knights, with an armed force of just 120, cut the Jacks to pieces with their weapons. "Using swords against scythes is cheating," Will Kell grumbled. Now there are rumors that Charles of Navarre is leading a fight back in the east. Will Kell says, "Charles of the Navarre, Charlie's for the chop. You'll see." The Paris Post supports their battling efforts. Are brave boys. But Charles of Navarre used one weapon that Will Kell didn't have. Brains! But that was just a burn to Will Kell. Oh, that was such a big burn. He just got wrecked. Completely. Oh, that's what I was thinking. Sorry, I'll keep this up here. I'm trying to get a position. Okay, fine. Will Kell conquered. The knights are back in power, where they belong. The Paris Post proudly announces that wicked Will Kell is dead. The Jackery is over. Actually, no, I think it's supposed to be sideways. Peace has returned to our troubled towns. Charles of Navarre, Charles of Navarre, likable lads faced Will Kale's revolting rats near Paris. Charles suggested that they should talk, and Kale, the clot, arrived without a guard. Naturally, Navarre nabbed him and locked him in chains. "That's cheating," Kale cried, but no one was listening. The leaderless louts of the Jackery were massacred or ran like rabbits. Cheerful Charles gave Kale the crown he craved, a crown of red-hot iron. Then he cut off his hateful head. Now he plans to lead an army of destruction through the region. Peasant houses, fields, and families will be destroyed. The noble Navarre promised. The noble Navarre promised. The Paris Post supporters, the Paris Post supporters, the overthrow of the sewer-scented masses, and the return of our true leader, Champion Charlie. The English peasants were a little way behind the French when it came to rebelling. The English peasants' revolt happened 23 years later in 1381. It wasn't only the French knights who could do a bit of cheating. English King Richard II was pretty good at it too. The second was pretty good at it too. The peasants in southern England were so fed up with paying the poll tax that they marched on London to see the king. They murdered a few unpopular lords on the way and stuck their heads on long poles. "How do I fasten the head onto the pole?" "Try some poll tax." That's not funny. But the lords were probably glad to have their noses well away from the smelly marching feet. The head of the revolting peasants was called Wat Tyler, which could have been a problem. "What's your name?" "What is it?" "Oh, wait, what's your name?" "That's right, it is." "What is it?" "Yes. Ask a civil question." That does not make any sense. Anyway, Wat's 20,000 rebels reached London and presented their demands. No more poll tax, no more slavery for peasants, freedom to use the forest, freedom to hunt wild animals. The lords in London promised to give in to his demand. Wat didn't believe them. What a wise Wat. His armies raised their trusty rusty swords and marched into London, murdered a bishop, a lord or two, and as many foreigners as they could get their scythes on. The 14-year-old King Richard II, perched on a war horse, promised Wat his support. Wat believed the king, showing he was really an unwise Wat. The head peasant boasted, "In 4 days' time, all the laws of England shall be coming from my mouth." Myth. But Wat Tyler hadn't read his horrible history books. He didn't learn from what had happened to Will Kale 23 years before. he agreed to meet the king and his guards at Smithfield. Some historians say that Wat Tyler began picking a fight with the king's squire and drew his knife. The Lord Mayor of London, William Walworth, drew his sword and killed Tyler. The leaderless peasants gave in, just as the French peasants had after Kiel's death. Which just goes to show history repeats itself. Oh, itself is repeating. Wat's head was stuck on a lance. The head peasant had become a headless peasant. What a way to go. Whose head? No, Wat's head. The William and his Normans are famous for the Doomsday Book, a record of everything everyone owned in England. Once the Normans knew what people were worth, then they could tax them. A lot of people forget that the poor people of England knew all about paying tax long before the Normans arrived. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to sit in a better position and say, The most famous tax dodge was the deal made by a famous Saxon striker called Lady Godiva. Roger of Wendover wrote the first report of her daring deed. Here it is in modern English, what is missing from Roger's version of this famous story. The good Countess Godiva longed to free the town of Coventry from the misery of heavy taxes. She often begged her measly husband, Earl Leofric of Chester, to free the town of those taxes. The Earl laughed at her. Your request is foolish, he said. Don't you see how we need that money? To cut those taxes would be to hurt me. Don't ever mention the subject again. We have a very expensive lifestyle. But Countess Godiva had the stubbornness of a woman. A very sexist remark that Wendover would not get away with today. She would not stop pestering her husband about the matter until finally he snapped at her. Go on your horse, ride naked through the marketplace in front of all the people. If you do that, I shall grant your request. Countess Godiva replied, If I am willing to do this, do I have your permission? Permission? You do, he agreed. At this, the Countess loosened her hair and let it fall until it covered her body like a veil. She mounted her horse, and escorted by 2 knights, she rode through the marketplace without being seen except for her fair legs. When she had completed the journey, she happily returned to her astonished husband, and was granted her request. Earl Leofric freed the town of Coventry from all taxes. Well, I suppose we could save money on clothes. When this story was repeated 100 years later, a historian added a new character to the story, a famous feller called Peeping Tom, while all the other citizens of Coventry and indoors and gave the Countess some privacy. Terrible Tom spied on her, which just goes to show, don't believe every story you read, especially history stories. Did you know a knight owned his peasants? They were considered part of his wealth. If you attacked a knight, then he'd probably shut himself safely away in his castle. The next best thing to do was to attack his peasants and the villages around him. In 12th century France, Thomas de Marle, nicknamed the Raging Wolf, attacked his father's peasants, cut off their feet or put out their eyes. What a measly way to go. He'll have to get some new New peasants. These ones are broken. Okay. I'm not going to be reading you the next chapter. So, bye-bye, farewell, whatever salute in the world.